The Wives of Avalon Estate, Book 4, The Life He Hid. Written by Mare Sutton, published by Avalon Press, an Earreads production. Chapter 1, Pamela. The casserole dish sat on the marble counter where I'd placed it 5 minutes ago. Melissa had wrapped it in foil herself. Now my kitchen smelled like someone else's cooking. I stood at the island and stared at the laptop screen. The email from the Austin realtor was still open. The subject line read, "Offer accepted, 4412 Barton Creek Boulevard." The timestamp said 2:47 p.m. Ron was in a client meeting at 2:47 p.m. I clicked the attachment. The PDF loaded in 4 seconds. A property listing, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a rooftop terrace with a view of the Colorado River. The asking price sat at the top of the page in clean black font, $612,000. I read the number twice. The granite was cold under my palms. I pressed harder. I scrolled to page 2 of the document. The buyer's name on the deed was listed as a Delaware LLC, Phoenix Horizon Holdings, LLC. I never heard of Phoenix Horizon Holdings, LLC. I opened a new browser tab. The Delaware Division of Corporations website loaded slowly. I typed the LLC name into the search field. The registered agent was a law firm in Wilmington. The date of formation was 14 months ago. 14 months. I closed my eyes for exactly 3 seconds. I opened them and pulled up our joint checking account. The routing number was still saved in my browser. I last logged in January when I paid the quarterly property taxes. The balance loaded, $4,211.08. Our average balance ran between $40,000 and $60,000. I scrolled to the transaction history. Monthly withdrawals of $3,000 hit the account for 11 months. The payee name was listed as Phoenix Advisory Services. 11 months, $33,000. Gone. The money transferred to a shell. The shell fed the LLC. The LLC bought a $612,000 townhouse in Austin, Texas. I looked at the tab he forgot to close. I typed Austin into the search field. 43 results loaded. The oldest thread dated back 16 months. The sender's name was Dara Ellison. The subject line read, "Re the rooftop." I clicked it. The email chain ran 14 messages deep. Dara's first message contained 3 photos. The rooftop terrace, the open concept kitchen, the master bedroom with floor-to-ceiling glass. She wrote, "Baby, it's perfect. Say yes." Ron replied in 4 minutes. "Perfect. Book it. 4 minutes. I once waited 6 weeks for him to approve our kitchen renovation budget." I kept reading. The thread below it was titled, "Moving Timeline." Dara asked about the school district. She asked about furniture storage. She used the word "we" 11 times in one paragraph. The granite pressed cold against my forearms. I scrolled to the next thread. The subject line read, "The Queen Bee." I stopped. I opened it. Ron wrote the first message, Tuesday afternoon, 14 months ago. I sat at Caden's lacrosse tournament, a folding chair, 2 thermoses of coffee, a rain jacket I never needed. His message read, "She won't look twice. The Queen Bee is too busy running her little kingdom to check the books." "We're good, Dee." The screen held very still. I read the sentence again. "The Queen Bee is too busy running her little kingdom." 14 years. 14 years of school calendars and HOA meetings and dinner parties for his clients. 14 years of thank you notes written in my handwriting and sent under his name. 14 years of performance reviews attended alone because he had a conflict, of pediatric appointments rescheduled around his travel, of his mother's birthday flowers ordered, wrapped, and delivered by me without a single phone call from him. His little kingdom. I did not cry. The red pen was in the drawer to the left of the dishwasher. I pulled it out. I reached above the refrigerator for the legal pad I kept for grocery lists. I set both on the counter. I uncapped the pen. I wrote at the top of the first page, the Dara tax. Below it, I drew 2 columns. Left column, date, right column, amount. I went back to the transaction history. I filtered for every entry that post-dated Ron's first email to Dara. 16 months of withdrawals populated the screen. I transferred each one to the legal pad in red ink. $3,000, November, Phoenix Advisory, $3,000, December, Phoenix Advisory. The red ink moved fast, the numbers stacked in a clean column. $14,000. March, renovation escrow, phase 1. That was the month we retiled our master bath. I managed that project alone. I selected the Calicut marble, negotiated the contractor rate, and supervised 3 weeks of installation. The same month, Ron wired $14,000 toward another woman's kitchen. $3,000. April, $3,000. May, $9,500. September, renovation, escrow, phase 2. September was Lily's birthday month. I organized the party, the cake, the 12 children in the backyard, the party favors sourced from a vendor in Vermont. Ron attended for 40 minutes before a call pulled him to his office. I kept writing. The Austin house was glass and steel and concrete. Every surface was hard and cold and new. No history in the walls. No children's heights marked on a door frame. No scuff marks on the baseboards from a stroller wheel. Our Avalon house was different. Crown molding, wainscoting, a wraparound porch with a swing we sat on together 4 years ago, and not since. A kitchen I designed to be warm and functional and permanent. A home built to look exactly like the life Ron was trying to escape. The Austin house was the man he wanted to be. The Avalon house was the cage. I ran the total at the bottom of the legal pad column, $56,500. I drew a box around the number in red. $56,500 was Caden's junior and senior year tuition at Whitmore Prep. It was the bathroom renovation, the new roof, and the landscaping contract combined. It was every deferred vacation, every not the right time. Every budget conversation held at this exact counter over coffee that went cold. I recapped the pen. The legal pad went under the fruit bowl. The red numbers faced down against the marble. A car pulled into the driveway. The garage door rumbled. I did not look up. I saved the transaction file. I navigated to our investment brokerage account. I took a screenshot of the current balance. I checked the home equity line of credit. $148,000 remaining. Ron did not touch it yet. The garage door opened. I closed every browser tab except the original Austin Realtor email. I left that one open. I straightened the laptop so it faced the kitchen entrance directly. I slid the casserole into the refrigerator. I turned on the coffee maker. I smoothed the front of my blouse with both hands. I stood at the counter with my back to the garage door and waited. His footsteps crossed the mudroom. Ron set his briefcase on the bench by the door. "There she is?" He sniffed the air. "You cook? Or did someone drop that off?" I poured 2 mugs of coffee. I set his on the far edge of the island. Melissa Hill stopped by. I turned around and looked at him. She brought a casserole. He loosened his tie. His jacket was the charcoal wool one. Italian. He bought it last fall on a trip I was not invited on. Ron reached for the mug. His eyes moved to the laptop screen. He read the subject line. The mug stopped halfway to his mouth. The color did not drain from his face all at once. It happened in sequence. First the jaw, then the forehead. The shoulders came last. I kept both hands flat on the counter. I did not speak. Ron set the mug down without drinking from it. "Pam..." I picked up my own coffee. I took a sip. The kitchen was very quiet. That came to my email. I set the mug down. Not yours. He opened his mouth. He closed it. Phoenix Horizon Holdings. I held eye contact. Tell me about Phoenix Horizon Holdings, Ron. The refrigerator hummed. The coffee maker clicked off. Ron's jaw moved twice without producing sound. I waited. Chapter 2. Ron. The screen faced me like a verdict. I set the mug down. I bought myself 3 seconds. 3 seconds was enough. I closed a $4.2 million mixed-use deal on a Tuesday afternoon with 2 hours of prep. I talked a Scottsdale zoning board out of a unanimous rejection with a cocktail napkin sketch. I could handle Pamela. She stood at the counter with both hands flat on the granite. Her posture was perfect. It was always perfect. The coffee steamed between us and she did not touch it. I loosened my tie 1 more inch. I walked toward the island. I kept my voice at the register I used for difficult clients. Easy, measured, slightly amused. Where did that come from? I've been sitting on that for 6 months. Her eyes did not move from my face. Sitting on it, the words came out flat, not a question. I pulled out the bar stool and sat. I turned the laptop toward me. I looked at the subject line like a man encountering a pleasant surprise. I let my mouth arrange itself into something close to a smile. It's an investment property. I scrolled down the listing with 1 finger. Austin market is outperforming every comparable metro right now. Cap rates are holding at 6%. The refrigerator hummed behind her. I ran the numbers in January. I turned the screen back toward her. Strong rental yield. Appreciation curve looks conservative but clean. I was going to tell you after the closing finalized. She looked at the screen. She looked back at me. Pamela set both hands flat on the counter. Phoenix Horizon Holdings. Her voice held no temperature. Walk me through the LLC. I built the LLC explanation in the car on the way home. Delaware registration for liability insulation, standard structure for investment properties. Any accountant would confirm it. I confirmed it, in fact, with our accountant, in a conversation I conducted without Pamela. I kept that part internal. Delaware LLC is asset protection. I leaned back on the stool. Standard structure keeps the property separate from our personal exposure. If a tenant slips on the steps, they sue the LLC, not us. The word use landed between us on the marble. I placed it there deliberately. Us was load-bearing. Us carried the entire frame of the lie. Pamela uncrossed her arms. She picked up her mug. She took 1 slow sip. She set it back down. The master bedroom. She tapped the listing photo on the screen. Floor-to-ceiling glass, rooftop terrace. She looked at me. That's a rental property. High-end short-term rental. I did not hesitate. Austin pulls corporate travelers, tech conference traffic, SXSW. That unit rents for $4,000 a week during peak season. I watched her process it. I read her face the way I read a site survey. Looking for the weak load points, looking for where the structure wanted to give. The face gave nothing. That was new. I pushed forward. Forward momentum was the only architecture that worked when the ground shifted underneath you. I wanted it to be a surprise. I let the timing land before I continued. 14 years, Pam. I thought we could use it ourselves off-season. Long weekends, just us. No HOA meetings, no school calendars. The casserole sat in the refrigerator behind her. Melissa Hill's casserole. Pamela put it away before I came in. She turned on the coffee maker. She smoothed her blouse. She was very prepared for this conversation. I noted that. I filed it. The wire. She set the mug down. $87,500. Closing balance. I kept my hands loose on the edge of the island. Down payment cleared in tranches over the last year, cleaner for the LLC accounting. Tranches. She said the word back to me without inflection. $3,000 a month into the Phoenix account. I nodded once. You would have seen it in the joint statements. I assumed you'd ask. The silence in the kitchen lasted 4 full seconds. I counted them. She never looked at the statements. Pamela managed the household accounts, the grocery card, the utilities, the school fees. The investment accounts were my domain, always my domain. That was the architecture of our marriage. Load-bearing walls, clearly assigned. She knew her walls, I knew mine. I stood from the bar stool. I moved toward the coffee maker and topped my mug. I kept my back to her for exactly the right number of seconds. Now you know. I turned around. Anniversary is 6 weeks out. I was going to put a bow on the deed. She stood exactly where she stood before. Hands back on the granite, posture perfect. The laptop screen glowed between us with the Austin listing still open. Her eyes moved to mine. They held something I did not have a name for. Not anger, not surprise. Something older than both. Something that sat in a drawer for a very long time, waiting to be uncapped. I kept my expression easy. I was the smartest man in this kitchen. I reached for my mug. Should we eat? I'm starving. Chapter 3, Ron. The elevator doors closed behind me. 14 floors. I straightened my tie in the brushed steel panel. The reflection looked good. The charcoal wool jacket still held its line after a full day. I always knew how to dress for the version of myself I was building next. The doors opened to the lobby of Cummins plus Associates. Glass, poured concrete, a reception desk that floated 6 inches off the floor on a steel cantilever. I designed every detail of this office myself. Every surface said the same thing. This firm does not apologize for its ambitions. My assistant looked up from her desk. I held up one hand. No calls, no interruptions. She nodded and looked back at her screen. The city waited beyond the floor-to-ceiling glass of my office. I crossed to the window and stood with my hands in my pockets. The afternoon light hit the skyline at a low angle. Long shadows, clean geometry, the kind of light that made even ordinary buildings look intentional. I navigated the most difficult conversation of my marriage and walked out of it clean. The kitchen was a zoning meeting. Pamela, the board. Difficult, prepared, impossible to charm with the standard pitch, so I scrapped the standard pitch. I used the truth's architecture. Familiar materials, unfamiliar arrangement, investment property, LLC liability protection, anniversary gift, cap rates. She processed it. She did not decode it. I was still standing. I moved to the desk and opened the laptop. The Phoenix Horizon Holdings portal loaded automatically. The wire transfer form sat exactly where I left it. Routing number, amount, destination account, $87,500. The closing balance, 14 months of patient construction, down to one final payment. I pulled up Dara's last message on my phone. She sent it at noon. Wire clears Thursday. I'll have the keys Friday. Below the text, the rooftop photo. The concrete terrace at golden hour. The horizon unobstructed in every direction. I set the phone face up next to the laptop. The Avalon house had a wraparound porch. I designed exactly 3 wraparound porches for Woodward clients in the firm's first year. Traditional roof lines, double-hung windows, wainscoting in every hallway. The kind of architecture that communicated arrival to people who measured arrival in crown molding. I built that world. I lived inside it for 14 years. The Austin townhouse was 62 feet of rooftop terrace and floor-to-ceiling glass. The kitchen faced east. The master suite sat on the top floor, every room designed around negative space, the deliberate absence of wall, of weight, of history. Negative space was the most honest architecture. I learned that in graduate school and forgot it somewhere between the first HOA meeting and the 15th dinner party seating chart. Pamela never understood negative space. She filled every gap: school calendars, contractor schedules, committee meetings. The Avalon house ran on her precision the way the Shinkansen ran on schedule. Tight, accurate, cold. I was not a bullet train. Dara understood that. She walked through the Austin townhouse on a FaceTime call 6 months ago. She moved through the empty rooms without narrating them. She stopped at the east kitchen window and held the phone up at the morning light for 11 seconds. She said nothing. The phone went back to her face. Dara pointed the camera at the horizon. This is the version of you I want. No legal pad, no line item budget, no receipt. I wired the first $3,000 the following Monday. The cursor sat on the submit button. I thought about the kitchen, the way Pamela stood at the counter, hands flat on the granite, posture perfect. The laptop screen glowed with the Austin listing like a loaded exhibit. She asked the right questions. I gave her better answers. Investment property, LLC structure, anniversary gift, cap rates at 6%. She stood there and processed it. Her face ran the numbers behind her eyes. I watched it happen. I knew that face. 14 years of dinner parties and budget reviews taught me exactly how long Pamela needed to reach an acceptable conclusion. She reached one, I was sure of it. The queen bee was back in her kingdom now. A casserole to heat, a school calendar to update, a gala committee agenda to draft. The Austin file closed in her mind under Ron's business, finance. Not my domain. It was always my domain. That was the architecture of our marriage. Clearly assigned walls, clearly assigned loads. She knew hers. I always knew mine. The wire confirmation form waited on the screen. I reached for the coffee mug on the desk. Cold. My assistant left it there 2 hours ago. I drank it anyway. The skyline held its geometry outside the glass. The blueprints for the warehouse district project sat rolled at the edge of the desk. A good project. A profitable project. The kind of work that reminded me what the firm was capable of when it wasn't building wraparound porches for Avalon Estates. Austin had projects like the warehouse district. Austin had clients who did not confuse tradition with taste, who did not need a roof line to communicate their net worth, who walked into a site meeting and said, "Show me what's possible," instead of "show me what my neighbors have." I was done with neighbors. I set the mug down. The cursor held steady on the submit button. The amount field read $87,500. The destination account read Phoenix Horizon Holdings, LLC, closing escrow. The timestamp on the form would read Thursday, 9 a.m. when it cleared. Thursday, 9 a.m., 48 hours. I pressed submit. The confirmation screen loaded in 2 seconds. A green check mark, a 12-digit reference number, an estimated clearance timestamp. Thursday, 9 o'clock. Exact. The check mark sat there, clean and final. The city spread below the glass. The blueprints waited on the desk. Somewhere across town, the queen bee ran her little kingdom and knew absolutely nothing about Phoenix Horizon Holdings, LLC. I looked at the green check mark for a long moment. I smiled. Chapter 4, Pamela. The house was silent at 11:47 p.m. Ron went to bed at 10. He kissed my cheek at the foot of the stairs. He smelled like scotch and self-satisfaction. The bedroom door closed. The light under it went dark in 4 minutes. 4 minutes. He slept like a man with a clean conscience. I waited 20 more. Then I carried my laptop to the kitchen island and sat on the bar stool he warmed with his arrogance 6 hours ago. The under-cabinet lights were on their lowest setting. The rest of the house was dark. The coffee I poured at 9 sat cold in the mug to my left. I did not touch it. I opened the laptop, the first tab loaded, the joint brokerage account. The balance sat at $214,880. I left it intact this afternoon, visible, normal. A set piece in the stage design of a functional marriage. Tonight the set came down. I opened a second tab. The private trust account I established 11 years ago sat dormant under my maiden name. Pamela J. Holt. A holdover from my corporate auditor days, funded with the last bonus I received before Caden was born. The balance grew quietly for 11 years. Dividends reinvested, no joint access, no Ron. I never told him it existed. 14 years of running his little kingdom. 14 years of legal pads and school calendars and dinner party seating charts executed under his name. Every HOA meeting, every contractor negotiation, every client dinner where I smiled across the table and asked the right questions in the right order while Ron collected the credit. He called it her little kingdom. The cursor moved to the transfer field. I entered the brokerage balance in full, $214,880. Destination, Pamela J. Holt Trust. Memo field, portfolio rebalancing. I selected next business day processing. The confirmation screen asked me to verify. I verified. The screen returned a reference number. I copied it to the running document open in a third tab. The document was titled Audit Log, Project Correction. Every transaction got a ROW, date, amount, source, destination, reference number. 14 years of embezzlement required a thorough correction report. I moved to the joint savings account next. $67,340. I built most of that balance myself. Quarterly transfers from the household management budget, I optimized down to the decimal over a decade. Ron never asked where the savings came from. He only asked where they went when he needed them. He was about to need them. The transfer field populated $67,340. Destination, Pamela J. Holt Trust. Memo, Household Reserve Consolidation. I submitted it. The screen confirmed. Another reference number, another row in the audit log. The cold coffee sat untouched to my left. The under-cabinet lights held their dim line across the marble. Above me, the bedroom was dark and quiet. Ron breathed up there in the dark, dreaming whatever architects dream when they believe their exits are engineered. I opened the Phoenix Horizon Holdings wire transfer portal next. Ron submitted the $87,500 transfer at 4:52 p.m. The status field read, pending. Estimated clearance Thursday, 9 a.m. I did not cancel it. Cancellation required his credentials. Cancellation left a timestamp. Cancellation was the move of a woman who was angry. I was not angry. I was a forensic auditor correcting a 14-year discrepancy in the books. The wire would attempt to clear Thursday morning. The source account would return a balance of 0. The clearinghouse would kick back one notification. Transfer failed. Insufficient funds. Ron would get that on his phone. I noted the estimated timestamp in the audit log, Thursday, 9 a.m. I labeled the row, controlled bounce, Phoenix wire. I moved to the joint credit lines. We held 3, a home equity line with $148,000 available, a joint visa with a $50,000 limit, a business card tied to Ron's firm but guaranteed under our joint SSNs. I logged into the credit bureau portal. My corporate auditor credentials were still active. I renewed them quietly every 2 years since Caden started kindergarten. Ron never asked why. He never asked why about anything that did not directly affect his bottom line. I placed a hard freeze on all 3 lines. The portal required identity verification for each. I submitted my driver's license number, my date of birth, the last 4 digits of my social security number, each freeze confirmed in under 30 seconds. The home equity line, frozen. The joint visa, frozen. The business guarantee card, frozen. 3 accounts, 3 reference numbers, 3 rows in the audit log. The legal pad sat at the edge of the island where I left it this afternoon. The red ink was dry. The DARA tax at the top of the page, the column of numbers below it, the boxed total at the bottom. $56,500. That was what DARA cost this marriage and documented transfers. The freeze would cost Ron considerably more. He called me the Queen Bee. He typed those words to another woman on a Tuesday afternoon while I sat in a folding chair in the rain, watching our son play lacrosse. He found the image funny. Domesticated, safe. A queen bee does not domesticate. A queen bee controls the hive. I pulled up the audit log and ran a final review. Every account, every transfer, every freeze reference number. The document ran to 2 pages. I exported it as a PDF and saved it to the Pamela J. Holt Trust cloud folder, the folder that existed before this marriage, the folder Ron did not have the password to. Then I opened one final tab, the contact page for Cassandra Wayne, attorney at law. I drove past her office on Meridian twice in the last month. A glass front suite on the 4th floor of the Avalon Commerce building, her name in brushed gold letters on the door. I did not call tonight. Tonight was not for lawyers. Tonight was for balance sheets. I copied her office number into the audit log at the bottom of the 2nd page, below the last reference number, below the controlled bounce timestamp, below the frozen credit lines and the rerouted brokerage and the box total in red ink. 1 line, no label, only the number. I closed the final tab, the audit log saved to the cloud. The trust account held $282,220 in transferred assets. The credit lines were frozen. The wire would bounce in 41 hours. The legal pad sat face down under the fruit bowl with its red column of 14 years. The screen went dark when I closed the laptop. The kitchen was very quiet. The queen bee locked the vault. Chapter 5. Ron. The espresso was perfect. Single origin. The beans came from a roaster in East Austin. I discovered them on my 3rd scouting trip and ordered a standing monthly shipment to the office. Dara laughed at that. She said only architects ordered standing coffee shipments. She was not wrong. The 14th floor caught the morning light at a clean angle. The city was sharp and bright below the glass. I stood at the window with the espresso and looked at it the way I always did. Like a blueprint I already approved. 8:52 a.m., 8 minutes. I moved to the desk. The Phoenix Horizon Holdings portal sat in one tab, my email in another. I refreshed both 3 times since I arrived at 7:30. The wire confirmation would come from the clearinghouse by 9. That was the standard window. The silver frame on the desk held a photo of Caden and Lily. Last summer at the Cape. Caden had his mother's posture. Lily had my jaw. Both of them were squinting into the sun and laughing at something outside the frame. Good kids. They would have the Austin rooftop on school breaks. They would learn what it meant to live in a city that rewarded ambition instead of appearances. I was not dismantling their world. I was designing them a better one. That was what architects did. The espresso finished. I set the cup on the desk. The city held its geometry outside the glass. The silver frame caught the light. The laptop screen waited. 8:59 a.m. I straightened in the chair. I pulled the laptop closer. The phone on my desk lit up first. One notification, the Clearinghouse app. I tapped it open. Transfer failed. Insufficient funds. Reference TXN-884412. Amount $87,500. Source account, joint operating, Cummins. Status, returned. I read it twice. The espresso cup was empty. The city was still bright. The notification sat on the screen in plain black text. Insufficient funds. I opened the joint operating account portal. My login populated automatically. The page loaded. Available balance, $0. I stared at the zero. Last Tuesday, that account held $44,000. I checked it myself. The screenshot sat in my phone. I pulled it up. $44,211.08. Tuesday, 2:31 p.m. The screen in front of me said 0. I went to the transaction history. One outbound transfer, Wednesday, 11:58 p.m. Amount $44,211.08. Destination, Holt Family Trust. Portfolio rebalancing. Holt. Her maiden name. The cold hit the back of my neck before my brain finished the sentence. I moved to the joint brokerage account. I typed the credentials. The screen returned one line. Access denied. Account freeze in effect. Contact your financial institution. I pushed back from the desk. The chair rolled 2 feet. I stood. The joint savings. I opened that portal next. Access denied. Account freeze in effect. The home equity line. Account frozen. No transactions permitted. The Visa. Card suspended pending account review. I stood at the desk with the phone in my hand. The city was still bright outside the glass. The silver frame still held Caden and Lily squinting in the Cape light. Everything in the office looked exactly as it did 8 minutes ago. Nothing was the same. I called the bank. The hold music started on the second ring. A piano loop. 12 seconds of it. Then a recorded voice told me my estimated wait time was 11 minutes. I hung up. I called the brokerage. Your account has been flagged for a security review. Please visit a branch location with 2 forms of government-issued identification. I ended the call. The espresso machine sat on the credenza behind the desk. I ordered a second cup from it at 8:15. The cup was still there, empty. I picked it up. I set it down. My assistant knocked once on the glass door. I held up one hand. She backed away. I tried the credit line portal next. The home equity application loaded. The available balance field read, $0, hard freeze applied, hard freeze. That was not a bank error. That was not a system glitch. A hard freeze required an account holder's deliberate request. My hands held very still on the edge of the desk. She did more than look at the books. I gave her the investment property line, the LLC structure, the anniversary gift. Cap rates at 6%. I watched her face process it. I read the load points. I walked out of that kitchen clean. I was certain. The zero balance sat on 3 separate screens. The hard freeze sat on 3 credit lines. The wire reference number sat in the Clearinghouse app stamped returned. Dara's message from Tuesday was still on my phone. Wire clears Thursday. I'll have the keys Friday. I opened a new message to her. I typed, "There's a delay." I stared at the 3 words. I deleted them. I picked up my keys from the desk. The car fob, the office key card, the small brass key to the Austin Realtor's lockbox I carried for 3 weeks like a talisman. The city outside the glass did not care. The silver frame did not move. The zero balance did not change. My pulse hit the back of my throat. The neck of my shirt was damp. The charcoal wool jacket felt 2 sizes too small. She was very prepared for this conversation. I noted that. I filed it. I decided it meant nothing. The elevator was at the end of the hall. I grabbed my keys and walked. Chapter 6, Pamela. The hydrangeas needed one stem cut shorter. I pulled the kitchen shears from the block and snipped it clean. The bloom dropped 1/4 inch. The arrangement leveled. 7 white heads in a low crystal vase, centered on the island exactly where the fruit bowl usually sat. The fruit bowl was in the pantry. The legal pad and the Austen deed were not. Both sat face down at the far end of the island, precisely aligned, 1 inch from the edge. I placed them there at 9:15 after I finished my coffee and rinsed the mug and set it in the drying rack. Then I arranged the hydrangeas. The kitchen smelled like cut stems and the last of the morning coffee. The under-cabinet lights were off. The room ran on natural light. Outside the window, the Avalon Estates lawn held its color in the late morning sun. The landscapers came on Tuesday. The hedges were clean even, and exactly right. Everything in this house was exactly right. The mudroom door hit the wall at 10:23 a.m. I did not turn around. His footsteps crossed the mudroom tile, fast, uneven. Not his usual stride. His usual stride was measured and deliberate, the walk of a man who believed every room adjusted itself to receive him. These footsteps were different. I set the shears on the counter and straightened the vase 1 millimeter to the left. Ron came through the kitchen doorway. I turned around. The charcoal jacket was wrinkled across both shoulders. His collar was open. The gold watch caught the light when he pressed both hands flat on the island. His forehead held a shine the morning did not put there. He looked like a building whose load-bearing wall got yanked. I looked at him the way I looked at a discrepancy in a balance sheet, steady, interested, without surprise. Ron gripped the island edge. "There's a problem with the bank accounts." I waited. Some kind of security breach. He straightened. He pushed a hand through his hair. "Fraud protocol. They freeze everything automatically. I've already called." I picked up the 2 items from the end of the island. I set them in front of him. The Austen deed on the left. The legal pad on the right. Red ink face up. He stopped. The deed sat between his hands. Phoenix Horizon Holdings, LLC, 4412 Barton Creek Boulevard, Austin, Texas. Purchase price $612,000. The legal pad sat beside it. The DARA tax at the top in red block letters, the column of dates, the column of amounts, the box total at the bottom, $56,500. Ron looked at the legal pad. He looked at the deed. He looked at me. I kept both hands on the counter. "Pam." His voice dropped. "This isn't what—" I held up one hand. He stopped. The wire bounced. I picked up the shears and set them in the drawer. "Insufficient funds." He opened his mouth. "The brokerage is frozen." I closed the drawer. "The savings are frozen." I turned to face him fully. "The home equity line is frozen." I folded my hands on the counter. "The visa is suspended." Ron's jaw worked without sound. "The accounts aren't frozen because of a breach." My voice held its register. "They're frozen because I froze them." The hydrangeas held still in their vase. Ron's hands left the island. He took 1 step back. "Pamela," I looked at the legal pad. 11 months of Phoenix advisory transfers. I touched the top of the column with 1 finger. 14,000 in March, 9,500 in September. I looked up. Renovation escrow for a kitchen I never saw. His face did the same sequence it did Tuesday night. Jaw first, then the forehead, then the shoulders. That's $56,500. I tapped the box total. I call it the Dara tax. The name sat in the kitchen air between us. Ron said nothing. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed on the street outside. The hydrangeas held their 7 white heads in the crystal vase. I know about the LLC. I straightened the legal pad so its edge aligned with the counterseam. I know about the Delaware registration. I looked at him. I know the registered agent's name and the Wilmington law firm's billing rate. Ron pressed his hand flat on the deed. We can talk about this. We are talking about it. Ron spread his hands. I made mistakes. I know that. He leaned forward, the charcoal jacket pulled across his shoulders. But we can fix this, Pam. Together. We can... I picked up the deed. I turned it over. On the back, I paper-clipped a single page. He looked at it. A transfer confirmation. Pamela J. Holt Trust, $282,220. Wednesday, 11:58 p.m. His mouth closed. The liquid assets have been corrected. I set the deed back on the counter. The credit lines are frozen until further notice. Ron looked at the number. He looked at me. I untied my apron and folded it twice. Your things are in the guest room. I set the apron on the counter. I moved them this morning while you were at the firm. His head came up. The children are at camp. I walked to the sink and ran the water cold. I rinsed the stem clippings from the basin. I turned the water off. They'll be home in 3 weeks. Ron stood at the island with the deed in front of him and the legal pad beside it and $282,220 on a transfer confirmation he did not know existed 48 hours ago. He opened his mouth once. I dried my hands on the dish towel. I hung it back on the oven handle. I looked him directly in the eye. The guest room is ready, Ron. I picked up the crystal vase and moved it 6 inches to the right. Don't make a scene in front of the neighbors. Chapter 7. Ron. The guest room was 14 feet by 12 feet. I measured it once during a renovation walkthrough 8 years ago. I remembered because the proportion was wrong. Too square. A room that didn't know what it wanted to be. Pamela made it want to be a magazine page. Floral wallpaper, cream and sage, heavy drapes the color of old money. A 4-poster bed with a quilted coverlet in the same cream, pulled tight at every corner. A nightstand with a lamp and a small dish for keys. An armchair by the window with a throw pillow that said nothing and meant nothing and cost $300. No desk, no shelving, no negative space. The room was full of things that added up to 0. I sat on the edge of the bed. The charcoal jacket was still on. The fabric went soft in the shoulders from the drive home, from the sweat, from the morning. I did not take it off. Taking it off meant staying. My phone sat in my hand. I opened a message to Dara. I typed, "Problem with the wire. Give me 48 hours." I looked at the message. I thought about the audit log Pamela built, the transaction history, the transfer confirmations, the Wilmington law firm's billing rate. She knew the billing rate. I deleted the message to Dara. I went to the banking app instead. The joint operating account loaded. The available balance field read $0. I went to the brokerage. Access denied. I went to the Visa. Card suspended. I went to the home equity portal. Hard freeze in effect. 4 screens, 4 dead ends. The phone screen held its light in the dim guest room. My firm card was in my wallet. The guarantee was tied to our joint SSNs. I tried it at the parking garage on the way out of the building. The attendant ran it twice. Both times the machine returned a single word. Declined. I paid with $43 in cash from my jacket pocket. The last cash I had. The garage attendant did not look at my face while he counted it. A sound came from downstairs, a drawer closing, then the soft percussion of cabinet doors. Pamela moved through the kitchen the way she always moved. No wasted steps, no hesitation between tasks. One action completed, the next one already in motion. The Shinkansen didn't break between stations. It simply arrived. I stood and walked to the window. The Avalon Estates lawn spread out below in the afternoon light. The hedges were trimmed clean. The flower beds held their rows in straight lines. 3 doors down, someone was washing a car in the driveway. The street looked exactly like a Tuesday. It was Thursday. Everything looked the same. Nothing was the same. I pulled up the Phoenix Horizon Holdings portal. The wire status still read, returned, insufficient funds. The Austin realtor called twice since 9 a.m. I did not answer. The closing was scheduled for tomorrow. The full balance due was $87,500. The source account held $0. The lockbox key was still in my jacket pocket. The small brass key I carried for 3 weeks like a talisman. I reached in and pulled it out. I set it on the nightstand dish, the one Pamela placed there for keys. It looked very small in the dish. The floral wallpaper held its pattern around me, cream and sage, and a repeated motif I could not name because I never learned the names of flowers that came on wallpaper. I spent 22 years learning the names of concrete finishes and glass coefficients and cantilever load ratios. Wallpaper was Pamela's domain. I sat back down on the bed. The quilted coverlet did not give under my weight. It was pulled too tight. I looked at the armchair by the window. The throw pillow, the lamp on the nightstand already on, set to a low, warm light, because Pamela set it before I arrived home. She moved my things this morning. While I sat on the 14th floor drinking East Austin espresso and watching a green check mark on a wire confirmation, she carried my suits from the master closet to this room. She hung them in the guest closet. She put my toiletries on the guest bathroom shelf. She turned on the nightstand lamp. She set the key dish out, because she knew I would need somewhere to put my keys. The sound from downstairs stopped. The house held a silence that was not peaceful. It was the silence of a structure reorganized around a new load-bearing plan. Every room was the same. Every surface was the same. The weight sat differently now. I pressed the banking app open one more time. $0. Access denied. Hard freeze in effect. I set the phone face down on the quilted coverlet. My gas tank read a quarter full. I looked at the gauge on the drive home. $43 in cash, now gone to the parking garage. No active credit lines, no accessible accounts. The firm's operating account required 2 signature authorization for withdrawals above $5,000. My business partner held the second signature. I could not call my business partner about this. I could not call anyone about this. The wallpaper held its pattern. The drapes held their weight. The nightstand lamp held its warm, useless light. The key dish held the small brass lockbox key to a property I could no longer reach. 14 years. 14 years in this house. I reviewed the original build plans before we bought it. I identified every structural inefficiency. The guest room proportion, the load-bearing wall placement, the wasted square footage in the mudroom. I noted all of it and said nothing and moved in anyway. Because the school district was right and the street was quiet and Pamela stood in the empty master bedroom and said, this was the one. I did not understand then what she meant by that. I looked at the phone on the coverlet, the brass key in the dish, the 4 suspended accounts on 4 separate screens. I understood it now. I built an exit for 14 months, structured it legally, engineered it financially, stress-tested every variable I could identify. I did not identify Pamela, the woman who ran this household like a Shinkansen, who moved through her kitchen without wasted steps, who placed a key dish in the guest room before I knew I would need one. I lived with her for 14 years. I did not see her once. Chapter 8. Pamela. The tuxedo fit him perfectly. It always did. Ron wore a formal jacket the way he wore everything, like the garment understood it was lucky to be on him. The black lapels held their line. The white shirt stayed crisp. The gold watch caught the chandelier light exactly as designed. He looked like a man with nothing to hide. That was the point. I checked my reflection in the hall mirror before we left the house. The navy gown was the right choice, structured through the bodice. A clean, uninterrupted line from shoulder to floor. No embellishment, no apology. I picked up my clutch from the console table. Ron stood at the base of the stairs with his hands in his pockets. I crossed to him. I took his arm. My hand closed around his forearm right above the wrist, not the soft grip of a wife who loves her husband, but the precise grip of a woman who already mapped every exit in the room. We walked out the front door together. The club foyer held 200 people, and the particular noise of money performing for itself. Crystal chandeliers, white floral arrangements taller than most of the men in the room. The string quartet in the far corner played something no one listened to. The club president found us in 40 seconds. Martin Hale, 63, a real estate attorney who represented 3 Avalon Estates closings in the last decade. He smiled the smile of a man who measured his social standing in room entry acknowledgments. Martin extended his hand to Ron. "Cummins, good to see you." Ron took it. "Martin, always." My hand rested on Ron's arm. The fabric of his tuxedo jacket was heavy and warm under my palm. Martin turned to me. "Pamela, stunning as ever." I smiled at Martin the way I smiled at difficult clients for 9 years. Warm, precise, a smile that gave nothing away. "You're too kind." I kept my hand on Ron's arm. Ron's been so looking forward to tonight. Martin launched into something about the club's expansion proposal. Ron responded in the correct register, confident, collegial, the charming architect who belonged in every room he entered. I let the conversation run 40 seconds. Then I steered Ron left toward the bar. My fingers pressed into his forearm as we moved through the crowd, 2 inches above his wrist. Steady pressure. Not enough to show. Enough to remind him. Ron kept his face neutral. At the bar, I accepted a glass of sparkling water. Ron reached for a scotch. My grip tightened once. His hand stopped. He took the water. We moved along the perimeter of the room. I nodded to Sandra Price from the landscape committee. I lifted my glass to Arthur Webb across the room. Ron matched my pace and my expression without instruction. He was good at the performance. He always was. The difference was that tonight I held the script. I turned us toward the far wall. The photographer was set up near the floral arrangement. He caught us at 20 feet and raised the camera. Ron's posture adjusted automatically, chest up, shoulders back, the stance of a man photographed at every professional milestone for 2 decades. I leaned into his arm. My fingers found his forearm again. My nails pressed into the wool above the wrist. The photographer counted down. Ron smiled. I smiled. The flash went off. I kept smiling. My nails held their pressure through the second shot and the third. We stepped away from the photographer. I guided us toward the alcove near the east corridor, out of the main sightline, still visible, not audible. I kept my hand on his arm. Ron kept his eyes forward. His jaw held its line. Ron turned his head a fraction of an inch. "How long do we have to do this?" I looked at a couple across the room. I raised my glass in acknowledgement. Until I decide we're done. The muscle in his forearm shifted under my palm. Ron kept his voice low. Pamela, I need access to the operating account. The Austin builder called again. If I don't, I turned to face him fully. Your professional reputation. I kept my voice at the level of pleasant conversation. Is a marital asset. Ron's eyes moved to mine. Your firm's client relationships. I took a small sip of water. Your board seat at the Commerce Club. Another sip. Your listing with the Woodward portfolio. I set the glass down on the ledge beside us. I own half of all of it. I looked back at the room. Every account, every contract, every referral that came through this neighborhood because of the life I built here. Ron said nothing. Break character tonight? I watched Sandra Price laugh at something across the room. And I start making calls Monday morning. The string quartet shifted to something slower. The chandeliers held their light. 200 people moved through the room in their black tie performances, none of them looking at the alcove by the east corridor. Ron stood very still. There is no Austin anymore. I picked up my glass again. There is no Wire. There is no Dara. Her name landed without theater. There is this house. I looked at him. There are 2 children at camp who come home in 3 weeks. I held eye contact for exactly 3 seconds. And there is whatever you decide to do next. The photographer moved to a group near the bar. His flash went off twice. The room continued its performance around us. Ron looked at the floor. Once, then back up. His posture reset, shoulders back, chest open. The charming architect, fully reassembled. I took his arm again. We walked back into the room. Sandra Price moved toward us with her husband and a smile that wanted to talk about the summer gala. I matched her energy precisely. I introduced Ron. He shook hands. He said the right things in the right order. The photographer circled back. He raised the camera. Ron put his arm around my waist. I leaned in. My nails found the back of his hand through the frame of the shot. The flash went off. Chapter 9. Ron. The bow tie sat on the kitchen counter at 1:04 a.m. I pulled it off in the car. I dropped it on the marble when we got inside. Pamela picked it up without breaking stride and set it on the counter's edge. Straight, aligned with the seam. She went upstairs. I stayed in the kitchen. The tuxedo jacket was still on. I stood at the island where 6 days ago I sold her the investment property lie. Where she stood with both hands flat on the granite and processed my cover story with a face that gave nothing. She processed the audit report. I pulled out the bar stool and sat. The refrigerator hummed. The under cabinet lights were off. The moonlight came through the window above the sink and hit the marble in a long, flat plane. The crystal vase held its hydrangeas in the dark. 7 white heads, still perfectly arranged. I thought about Dara, the rooftop at golden hour, the 11 seconds of silence and the horizon and the coffee in her hand, the way she moved through the Austin townhouse like a woman already living there. She was easy to want. That was the problem. I saw it clearly now, in a kitchen that cost more than Dara's entire building to furnish. Everything about Dara was easy. Easy to call, easy to want, easy to schedule into the gaps of a life I decided was too small for me. Pamela was not easy. Pamela was precise load-bearing architecture in a room full of decorative columns. She stood in that gala and moved 200 people without raising her voice. Martin Hale, Sandra Price, the club photographer, the board members. She steered them all the same way she steered me through the crowd. A hand on the arm, a smile at the right angle, a pressure that was invisible until you felt it. I watched her do it for 14 years and called it running her little kingdom. I typed that in an email. I sent it to Dara. I pressed send and felt clever. The moonlight held its plane across the marble. I pulled out my phone. Dara's last message sat unread. She sent it at 11:15. While I stood in the gala alcove and let Pamela itemize my professional assets in a voice designed to sound like pleasant conversation, I looked at Dara's message. Still no update. Getting nervous. Call me. A rooftop, a coffee cup, 11 seconds of horizon. That was the architecture of what I almost traded this house for. A woman who sent getting nervous at 11:15 when her wire didn't clear. Pamela sent no messages in 6 days. Pamela moved $300,000. She froze 4 accounts and placed a hard freeze on 3 credit lines. She packed my suits, set out a key dish, and attended a black tie gala. She smiled for the photographer while her nails pressed into the back of my hand. Not one message. I set the phone face down on the counter. The kitchen held its silence. The hydrangeas held their arrangement. The bow tie sat at the edge of the marble exactly where she placed it. I thought about the Austin floor plan, the polished concrete and the east-facing kitchen, and the 62 feet of rooftop terrace. I walked it in my head every day for 8 months. I called it negative space, breathing room, the version of myself I was building next. It was a 3-bedroom condo in a city I visited 6 times. I heard the bedroom door upstairs, footsteps on the stairs, even, unhurried. The Shinkansen didn't break between stations. It simply arrived. Pamela came through the kitchen doorway in a gray robe. She moved to the cabinet above the sink. She took down a glass. She filled it from the tap. She drank half standing at the sink with her back to me. She knew I was there. She knew before she came downstairs. I straightened on the bar stool. I looked at the bow tie on the counter. I watched you tonight. My voice came out lower than I intended. At the gala. Pamela set the glass down. I put both hands flat on the marble. I saw how they moved around you. I kept my eyes on her. Martin, the whole room. The refrigerator hummed. The moonlight held its plane. I looked at the bow tie at the edge of the counter. I built the wrong thing. A pause. The Austin house. Dara. All of it. Pamela turned around. She leaned against the sink, arms crossed. Her face held the same expression it held for 6 days. Steady, interested, without heat. I looked at her directly. I don't want the escape pod. The words came out flat, physical facts. I want this. I want you. 5 seconds of silence. The hydrangeas held still. Pamela looked at me, not at my face, not at my eyes. She looked at me the way she looked at a transaction history, the way she looked at a column of numbers that didn't reconcile. She looked through the tuxedo jacket and the charcoal wool and the gold watch and the jaw and the posture and every surface I spent 53 years designing. She looked at the load-bearing structure underneath. She found it insufficient. Pamela picked up her glass. She finished the water. She rinsed the glass. She set it in the drying rack. She walked back through the kitchen doorway without a word. The footsteps went up the stairs, even, unhurried. The bedroom door closed. The bow tie sat at the edge of the marble. The hydrangeas held their 7 heads in the dark. The moonlight crossed the counter in a long, flat plane and illuminated nothing useful. I sat in the kitchen of the house I almost left. I sat there for a long time. Chapter 10. Ron. The phone sat face up on the marble at 8:47 a.m. I placed it there myself, both hands on the counter. Pamela stood across the island with her arms crossed and her coffee untouched. She wore the gray robe from last night. Her hair was pulled back, no jewelry, no performance. She looked like a woman who already issued the verdict and was waiting for the sentencing. The kitchen clock moved. 8:51. The Austin closing was scheduled for 9 a.m. The realtor's office opened at 8. She called twice already. Both times I watched the screen light up and did not answer. The moonlight was gone. The morning came through the window above the sink in a flat gray sheet. The hydrangeas on the island dropped one petal overnight. It sat on the marble beside the vase, white and still. 8:54. I picked up the phone. Pamela did not move. I found the realtor's number. I pressed speakerphone. I set the phone back on the marble between us. The line rang twice. A woman's voice came through the speaker. Barton Creek Realty, this is Sheila. I put both palms flat on the counter. This is Ron Cummins, Phoenix Horizon Holdings. A pause. Mr. Cummins, we've been trying to reach you. The closing is in a... Cancel it. The words came out clean. No pivot, no architecture. The closing is canceled. Silence on the line. Sir, if you cancel today, the earnest money is non-refundable. You forfeit the full deposit. The refrigerator hummed. Pamela's arms stayed crossed. I understand. I looked at the phone. Cancel it. Another pause. Longer. The deposit is $62,000, Mr. Cummins. I understand. I kept my voice flat. Cancel the closing. Dissolve the purchase agreement. Send the written confirmation to this number. The realtor's voice shifted to professional autopilot. She confirmed the cancellation. She confirmed the forfeiture. She said the paperwork would arrive within the hour. I ended the call. The phone screen went dark. $62,000. Gone. The earnest money, the LLC filing fees, the 14 months of Phoenix advisory transfers, the renovation escrow payments, the East Austin espresso subscription I set up for the townhouse kitchen. All of it, ash. Pamela looked at the phone. She looked at me. Her face held its clinical register, steady, waiting. I picked up the phone again. Dara's number sat at the top of my recent calls. 7 attempts in the last 4 days, all from her. I pressed her name. I pressed speakerphone. I set the phone back on the marble. It rang 3 times. Dara's voice came through, tight, relieved. Ron, finally, what is happening? The realtor just... I pressed both palms flat on the counter. It's done. My voice came out flat. The closing is canceled. A beat of silence. What? Her voice rose. What do you mean canceled? We had a plan. You said Thursday. The plan is over. Short, complete. Nothing after it. Ron, her voice dropped. Talk to me. What happened? The petal sat on the marble beside the vase. White, still. This is over, said once. No room to extend it. All of it. You can't just... Her voice broke on the word. We built something. You said this was real. The gray morning held its flat light on the marble. Pamela stood with her arms crossed, her coffee untouched, her face completely still. It wasn't. No qualifiers, no follow-up. Ron? Dara's voice went quiet. Don't do this. I looked at the phone. Don't call this number again. I kept my voice at the same register throughout. No rise, no softness, no architecture. This is the last time we speak. The line held its silence for 3 seconds. The call ended. The phone screen went dark again. The kitchen held its silence. The hydrangeas held their 7 heads and 1 fallen petal. The clock on the wall read 8:59. The Austin closing was 60 seconds from its scheduled start time in a conference room I would never sit in. I left the phone on the marble. I looked at Pamela. She stood exactly where she stood for the last 12 minutes. Arms crossed, coffee cold, the gray robe, the pulled back hair, the face that did not shift once through 2 phone calls and $62,000 and the end of 14 months of engineering. She looked at me the way she looked at the last line of an audit report, checking the total, verifying the math. I kept both hands on the counter. I did not reach for her. I did not speak. Every word went into the 2 phone calls. None remained for anything that mattered. The phone buzzed once on the marble. The written cancellation confirmation from Sheila at Barton Creek Realty. I did not look at it. I waited. Pamela uncrossed her arms. She picked up her coffee mug. She looked at it. She set it back down without drinking. She looked at me for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. The clock moved. The fallen petal held its place on the marble, white and perfectly still, going nowhere. Pamela turned and walked to the sink. She poured the cold coffee down the drain. She rinsed the mug. She set it in the drying rack. She dried her hands on the dish towel. She hung it back on the oven handle. She walked out of the kitchen without a word. I stood at the island alone. The phone screen lit up once more. Dara's name. One last call. I watched it ring. I watched it stop. I turned the phone face down on the marble. I waited for the verdict in a kitchen that already issued it. Chapter 11. Pamela. The mug sat in the drying rack. I dried my hands on the dish towel. I hung it back on the oven handle. The kitchen was quiet behind me. The phone sat face down on the marble. The cancellation confirmation from Barton Creek Realty glowed on its screen. I walked to the hall closet. The document sat in the interior pocket of my burgundy portfolio. I retrieved it Wednesday afternoon from Cassandra Wayne's office. Her assistant printed 3 copies on bond paper. I took 1. I left 2 with Cassandra. The portfolio came back to the kitchen with me. I set it on the table, not the island. The kitchen table, where we ate breakfast on Sunday mornings before Sunday mornings, meant anything. I pulled out a chair and sat. I opened the portfolio. The document was 11 pages. The cover sheet read, Equity Trust Agreement, Cummins plus Associates Architecture, LLC. Below that, 2 signature lines, his name on the left, mine on the right. My signature was already there. Cassandra notarized it Wednesday at 4:15. I set the document on the table. The morning light came through the east window in a flat gray sheet. It hit the bond paper and made the text very clear and very readable. Ron still stood at the island. I looked at him once. Then I looked back at the document. Ron pushed off the counter. He walked to the table. He stood across from me and looked at the cover sheet. His eyes moved down the page. He read the title. He read the signature lines. He looked up. What is this? Not a question, a reading. I placed one hand flat on the cover sheet. Your shares in Cummins and Associates. I kept my voice at its standard register. 49% equity. I slid the document 1 inch toward him. Transferred to a trust under my sole control. Ron looked at the paper. Ron pulled out the chair across from me. He sat. Pamela. I canceled the closing. I ended it. On speakerphone. Yes. Ron kept his voice level. That's not enough? No. I turned to page 4, the equity schedule. I turned it to face him. It is not. The numbers sat in a clean column. His shares, the firm's current valuation, the trust's terms, a quarterly audit provision, a dissolution clause triggered by any undisclosed transfer above $5,000. Ron read the page. The morning light held its flat plane across the table. The portfolio sat open beside the document. The drying rack held the rinsed mug. The dish towel hung straight on the oven handle. Ron's voice went very quiet. You're asking me to sign over the firm. Half the firm. I turned to page 7. The quarterly audit provision. I set my finger below the relevant clause. The trust audits the firm's accounts. Every quarter. I looked at him. Any transfer above $5,000 requires my countersignature. Ron read the clause. The refrigerator hummed. The cancellation confirmation still glowed on the phone screen across the room. Ron looked up. This is permanent. This isn't a temporary. Page 9. I turned to it. The dissolution clause. The trust dissolves on one condition. I tapped the paragraph. Joint petition. Both signatures notarized. He read it. You keep the trust as long as you want. I turned back to page 1. That is the structure. Ron sat back in the chair. His hands rested on the table. The gold watch caught the gray morning light. The tuxedo jacket was gone. He wore a white dress shirt from last night, untucked, the collar open. He looked like the morning after a demolition site, cleared, level, nothing left standing. Ron looked at the document. You want collateral? His voice held no argument, only the fact. I want equity. I kept both hands flat on the document. Verbal commitments clear an account to 0. I looked at him directly. Equity is a different instrument. The morning light moved 1 degree across the table. Ron looked at the document. He looked at the signature line on the left with his name printed below it in clean black type. His jaw held its line. You burned $62,000 this morning. I kept my voice at the level of a quarterly review. You ended a 14-month liability. I turned to the cover sheet. This is the next step. He said nothing. The firm is worth $4.2 million. I turned to the equity schedule. Your 49% represents $2.058 million. I set my finger below the valuation line. That is enough to fund 3 Austin townhouses. Ron looked at the number. The ice maker shifted. The phone screen went dark across the room. The Barton Creek confirmation timed out. She has nothing now. I closed the portfolio. I need to know you have nothing either. Ron looked at the cover sheet for a long time. The morning light held its plane. I reached into the portfolio. I retrieved the silver pen. I set it on top of the signature line on the left side of the document. The pen sat on the paper, precise and still. I stood. I pushed in my chair. I walked out of the kitchen. Chapter 12. Ron. The silver pen sat on the signature line. I looked at it for 11 minutes. I know because the kitchen clock moved and I counted the marks without meaning to. The document sat open to page 1. The cover sheet. The title in clean black type. My name on the left signature line. Pamela's name on the right. Already signed, already notarized, already done. She signed it on Wednesday. 3 days ago, I sat on the 14th floor and pressed submit on a wire transfer and smiled at a green checkmark. She already sat in this chair. She already read 11 pages. She already picked up a pen. I picked up the silver pen. I set it back down. The morning light moved across the table. The drying rack held the rinsed mug. The dish towel hung straight on the oven handle. The house ran its systems around me the way it always ran them. Silent, precise, indifferent to whether I was in it or not. I turned to page 4. The equity schedule, my 49%, the firm's valuation at $4.2 million. 22 years of projects, of client relationships built one referral at a time, of early mornings and site visits and zoning appeals, and the slow accumulation of a reputation that opened rooms. The trust would own it, not the firm. The firm would still run. My name would still be on the glass doors of the 14th floor. I would still sit at the desk with the city spread below me and the blueprints rolled at the edge. But the equity, the actual structural weight of 22 years, would sit in a trust controlled by a woman I called the Queen Bee in an email to my mistress. I closed page 4. I picked up the silver pen. I put it in my jacket pocket. I drove to Cassandra Wayne's office. The Avalon Commerce building sat on Meridian at the corner of Prestige Row, 4th floor, a glass front suite with her name in brushed gold letters on the door. I drove past it 100 times without looking at it directly. The lobby directory listed her firm under family law and asset litigation. Asset litigation. The elevator opened to a reception area with dark wood paneling and no ambient music. The receptionist was young and efficient and did not smile when I gave my name. She picked up the phone, said 2 words, set it down. Ms. Wayne will see you. The door to the inner office was mahogany, heavy. It opened without sound on well-maintained hinges. Everything in this office was maintained. Nothing was decorative. Cassandra Wayne stood behind her desk. She was not what I expected. I expected the sharp edges of a woman who charged $400 an hour to dismantle marriages. I expected theater. She was simply still, 50-something, a gray suit, well cut, hair pulled back without apology. She looked at me the way Pamela looked at a transaction history, steady, thorough, without temperature. She did not extend her hand. Cassandra gestured to the chair across the desk. Mr. Cummins. I sat. The desk between us was mahogany and clean. 1 legal pad, 1 pen, a file folder with my name on the tab. She kept a file on me. Of course she kept a file. She opened it. I understand you're here to execute the equity trust agreement. Her voice carried the flat efficiency of someone who conducted this meeting many times. 11 pages, already notarized on the second party's behalf. I reached into my jacket. I set the document on the desk. The silver pen sat on top of it. Cassandra looked at both items without touching them. Cassandra held her pen above the legal pad. Before you sign, I'm required to confirm you've had the opportunity to seek independent counsel. Have you reviewed the agreement with your own attorney? No. She wrote something on the pad. You understand this transfer is permanent, absent a joint petition. She turned to page 9 without looking at the page number. She read this document before. She knew where everything was. You understand the quarterly audit provision on page 7? Yes. You understand the dissolution clause requires both signatures, notarized? Yes. The gold watch caught the light from the window behind her desk. The charcoal wool jacket held its line across my shoulders. I dressed this morning out of reflex. The same jacket, the same watch, the uniform of a man who arrived. The watch was a marital asset. The jacket was a marital asset. The 22 years of client relationships and zoning appeals and referrals and the brushed gold letters on the 4th floor door were about to become a marital asset held in trust. Cassandra turned the document to face me. She set her own pen beside the silver one. Cassandra kept her voice flat. Sign and initial each page. Full signature on page 11. The document sat open on the mahogany desk. Page 1. The cover sheet, my name on the left signature line in clean black type. I picked up the silver pen. Page 1. Signed. The pen moved to the bottom right corner. Initialed. Page 2. Initialed. Page 3. Initialed. the equity schedule on page 4. I did not read it again. I initialed it. Page 5, page 6, page 7. The quarterly audit provision. I set the pen to the paper, initialed. Page 8, page 9. The dissolution clause, initialed. Page 10, initialed. Page 11. The final signature line. My full name, printed below a blank that waited since Wednesday. The silver pen held very still above the line. The office was quiet. Cassandra sat with her hands folded on the desk. She did not watch the pen. She looked at a point slightly above my left shoulder. Patient, unhurried. She waited through signings before. I signed. The pen came off the page. The signature sat there in the ink. Complete. Notarized on the second party's behalf, Wednesday. Countersigned by me on a Friday morning that started with a bounced wire and ended here. I set the silver pen on top of the signed document. I slid both across the mahogany desk. Cassandra looked at the signature. She verified the page. She verified the initials. She opened a desk drawer and retrieved a notary seal. She pressed it to page 11 without ceremony. She closed the document. She placed it in the file folder with my name on the tab. Cassandra set her pen on the legal pad. Ms. Holt Cummins will receive a certified copy by end of business today. I stood. The mahogany door opened without sound on its well-maintained hinges. The reception area held its dark wood and its silence. The elevator came in 12 seconds. The lobby directory passed in my peripheral vision on the way out. Family law and asset litigation. I walked out into the street. The charcoal wool jacket held its line. The gold watch held its place above my wrist. Both sat differently now. Not the weight of arrival, the weight of inventory. 2 items in a ledger controlled by someone else. I stood on the corner of Meridian and Prestige Row. I built an exit for 14 months. The exit was gone. The throne was gone. I put my hands in my pockets and walked to the car. Chapter 13, Ron. 30 days in the guest room. The floral wallpaper no longer registered. The heavy drapes, the quilted coverlet pulled tight at every corner. The nightstand lamp set to its low, warm light. The key dish where the brass lockbox key no longer sat because I threw that key in a storm drain on Meridian 3 weeks ago. None of it registered anymore. It was only a room. I woke at 6. I made the bed. The coverlet went tight at every corner because Pamela made her bed that way. The guest room shared a wall with the master, and I decided that every default in this house would be hers. The bathroom shelf held my toiletries in a straight line. Alphabetical, a system I built myself 30 days ago for no reason except that order was the only architecture still available to me. I went downstairs at 6:40. The coffee maker ran on a timer. It finished at 6:30. 2 mugs. I poured both. I set Pamela's on the far left of the island where the morning light hit it first. I took mine to the kitchen table and sat. The house ran its systems around me. At 7:15, her footsteps came down the stairs. Even, unhurried. The Shinkansen arrived on schedule. She came through the kitchen doorway in the gray robe. She went to the island. She picked up the mug I left for her. She did not say thank you. She did not need to. The mug was a compliance item, not a gesture. I looked at the table. At 7:40, she went back upstairs. At 8:15, she came down in work clothes and left through the mudroom. The car backed out of the driveway with the same measured precision as everything else she did. The house went quiet. The firm still ran. I went in at 9. My name still sat in brushed gold letters on the 4th floor glass. My desk still held the city view and the rolled blueprints and the espresso machine I no longer used because the East Austin subscription was canceled. The beans ran out. I did not reorder them. The espresso machine sat on the credenza. A French press now, grocery store ground coffee. It was adequate. The quarterly audit arrived on the 1st of the month. A packet from Cassandra Wayne's office. 12 pages, every account, every transfer, every client invoice above $5,000. I reviewed it the night before it was due. I prepared a summary memo. I slid it under Pamela's office door at 8 p.m. She never commented on the memo. The absence of a response was the response. At the firm, I ran meetings the same way I always ran them. The client relationships held. The Woodward portfolio renewed its contract. The warehouse district project moved to the permit phase. My business partner asked once, quietly, if everything was all right at home. I told him yes. He did not ask again. The children came home 3 weeks ago, Caden and Lily. The house shifted when they arrived, noise in the hallways, shoes left at the bottom of the stairs. The refrigerator opened and closed in patterns that had nothing to do with compliance. I moved through their return carefully. Caden noticed I was in the guest room on the second night. He stood in the doorway and looked at the floral wallpaper without expression. He was 16 and precise in the way of a boy who learned precision from his mother. Caden leaned against the doorframe. "Are you and Mom okay?" I looked at my son. "We're working on it." The words came out without architecture. No pivot, no spin. Fact only. He looked at me for a moment longer than was comfortable. Then he walked away. Lily did not ask. Lily watched. She had Pamela's eyes and Pamela's habit of processing information behind a still face before deciding what to do with it. She watched me pour the morning coffee. She watched me set the mug on the island's far left. She watched the mug sit there until her mother came downstairs. She said nothing. The house ran its systems. The trust quarterly audit sat filed in Cassandra Wayne's office. The guest room drapes held their heavy cream weight against the window each night. I sat on the edge of the bed at 10:15 p.m., 30 days. The man who pressed submit on a wire transfer and smiled at a green checkmark no longer existed in any architecture I recognized. He sat on the 14th floor with East Austin espresso and a city that looked like a blueprint he already mastered. He called this house a cage. The cage was him. The auditor understood load-bearing structures. She knew before he did. She notarized her signature on Wednesday while he still drank expensive espresso and decided which version of himself to build next. No more versions. The guest room held its silence. The nightstand lamp held its low, warm light. Outside the window, the Avalon Estates street sat quiet under its manicured dark. At 10:22, footsteps came down the hall. Not the stairs, the hall. They stopped outside the guest room door. The silence lasted 4 seconds, 5, 6. The footsteps moved on, past the door, into the bathroom at the end of the hall. The water ran for 30 seconds. The footsteps came back. They stopped again outside the door. My chest held the kind of stillness that precedes a structural assessment. Not peace. Suspension. The moment before the load shifts and you find out what holds and what fails. The footsteps did not move for 11 seconds. Then they went back down the hall. The master bedroom door closed. I sat in the dark on the edge of the quilted coverlet with both hands flat on my knees. The floral wallpaper held its pattern around me. The key dish held nothing. 11 seconds. She stopped outside my door for 11 seconds. My pulse did not return to its baseline for a long time. Chapter 14, Pamela. The memo was 4 pages, single-spaced, 12-point font, a cover sheet with the trust account number, the audit period, and the date in the upper right corner. Flush right, clean. I sat at my desk and read it. The first page was a transaction summary. Every transfer above $5,000 itemized by date, amount, and destination. The warehouse district permit fees. The Woodward portfolio renewal. A consultant invoice from a structural engineer in Philadelphia. Each entry included the corresponding client invoice number. He cross-referenced the outflows to their billable sources without being asked. I turned to page 2, a reconciliation table. Projected quarterly revenue against actual. A variance column on the right. Every variance under 3%. One line item carried a note in parentheses. Weather delay, permit timeline adjusted, client informed September 14th. The parenthetical was not required. He included it anyway. Page 3. A narrative summary. 8 sentences, no architectural language, no visionary framing, no big picture pivot. 8 sentences that said exactly what the numbers said and stopped. Page 4. Attachments. The bank statements, the client contracts. The structural engineer's invoice with his firm letterhead and license number. I set the memo on the desk. The office was quiet at 9:14 p.m. The desk lamp held its circle of light on the bond paper. Outside the window, the Avalon Estates street sat still under its manicured dark. I looked at the cross-referenced line items. 22 years of running his firm on instinct and charm, and the particular arrogance of a man who believed his talent excused his accounting. 22 years of transactions I never reviewed. The memo was perfect. Not impressive. Not strategic. Perfect in the way a correctly balanced ledger was perfect. Accurate, complete. Without flourish. I picked up the silver pen from the desk. I turned it once in my fingers. The hallway was quiet last night at 10:22. I stood outside his door for 11 seconds. Not because I softened. Not because 30 days of folded laundry and morning coffee and audit memos moved anything in my chest that I was willing to name yet. I stopped because I listened. I listened for the sound of a man performing compliance. A man counting the days until the quarterly audit passed and the children settled back into their routines, and the guest room became negotiable again. A man waiting for the perimeter to relax. I heard nothing. The guest room was silent in the way of a room where someone stopped making plans. That was the variable I needed. A man still designing an exit made noise. Subtle noise. The particular frequency of a person monitoring their own behavior from the outside. 9 years in forensic auditing taught me to hear it. The performance of cooperation was never quite the same as cooperation. The room was silent. I set the silver pen down. I picked up the memo again. I turned to page 3, the 8-sentence narrative. The last sentence read, "All accounts remain compliant with trust agreement terms as of this reporting period. No addition, no plea attached. The architect would have attached a plea. He would have written one careful sentence at the bottom of page 3. Something that sounded like a business note but carried a personal frequency underneath it. He would have trusted his own cleverness to do the work he was too controlled to do directly. The sentence wasn't there. I looked at the memo for a long time. Then I set it in the left-hand drawer of my desk, the drawer where I kept the documents that required further review. Not the filing cabinet, not the shredder, the further review drawer. The desk lamp held its light. The street outside held its quiet. The house ran its systems the way it always ran them. Caden's light was on under his door down the hall. Lily's was off. She slept early and woke early, the same way I did, the same way she always had. I stood. I walked to the office door and opened it. The hallway was dark except for the line of light under Caden's door. The guest room door was closed. No light underneath it. He was in the dark, the same as last night, the same as the night before. 30 nights in the dark. I walked to his door. I did not press my ear to it. I did not listen for the frequency of performance. I already did that last night. I got the answer I needed. I knocked once, a pause, 4 seconds, the sound of the bed. The door opened. Ron stood in the doorway in a white t-shirt and dark trousers. No jacket, no watch. The gold watch sat on the nightstand dish behind him where the brass lockbox key used to sit. His face held the same expression it held for 30 days. Present, careful, asking nothing. I looked at him for exactly 3 seconds. I looked at the point above his left shoulder the way Cassandra Wayne looked at a point above mine when I signed my half of the trust agreement. Clinical, thorough, without temperature. Then I looked at him directly. The kitchen, Ron. My voice held its standard register. 10 minutes. I turned and walked back down the hall. The office light was still on. The memo sat in the further review drawer. The silver pen sat on the desk beside the lamp. I went downstairs. I put the kettle on. I set 2 mugs on the island and waited to see which man came through the kitchen doorway. Chapter 15. Ron. The under-cabinet lights were on. 2 mugs on the island, steam rising from both. The kettle sat on the back burner. The kitchen smelled like chamomile and the particular quiet of a house where 2 teenagers were asleep upstairs. Pamela stood at the far end of the island. She did not look up when I came through the doorway. She looked at her mug, both hands around it, the gray robe, the pulled back hair, the face that processed everything behind its surface before deciding what to show. I walked to the island. I did not take the bar stool. I stood across from her. The second mug sat in front of me. I picked it up. The heat came through the ceramic into my palms. The oven clock read 10:31. Pamela looked up. She looked at me the way she looked at page 3 of the memo, checking the sentence, checking what was and wasn't there. I held the mug and waited. Pamela set her mug down. She aligned it with the counter seam. 1 precise adjustment. The Austin property. She kept her voice at its standard register. Not the money. She looked at me directly. The why. The steam rose from both mugs. The pipes answered somewhere in the walls. The oven clock moved to 10:32. The urge arrived exactly as I knew it would. The lean in. The measured pause before speaking. The voice drop to the register I used for difficult clients and zoning boards. The particular species of conversation where charm was a structural material. I felt it. I let it pass. I set the mug down. I was afraid. Stated, settled, done. Pamela held very still. Not of you. I kept my hands on the mug. Of being seen. Nothing added, nothing implied. By you. The refrigerator hummed. The steam thinned. I built things. I looked at the island surface. Good things. You watched. I looked up. You always knew the load capacity before I did. Her face held its stillness. That terrified me. I set the mug down and kept both palms flat on the marble. No lean, no drop in register, no architecture. I didn't want a new life. I looked at her directly. I wanted to stop being the man you already knew. I kept my voice at one level throughout. The man who wasn't enough, the man who couldn't hold his own floor plan. The kitchen held its quiet. Dara didn't know my load capacity. The sentence came out flat, a fact. She only saw the elevation drawings. Pamela looked at me, not through me, not above my left shoulder, at me. At the same point, she looked at the cross-referenced line items, present, measuring, without verdict yet. I kept both hands on the marble. The Austin house was a demolition plan. My voice stayed level, not a new build. I looked at the island surface once, then back at her. I knew the difference. I chose not to. The oven clock moved to 10:36, 4 minutes. I spoke for 4 minutes without a single metaphor and without a single sentence that asked for anything. The vertigo of it sat in my chest like a load-bearing wall just removed. The structure above it held, or it didn't. I picked up the mug. Pamela looked at her own mug. She looked at the counter seam. She looked at the space between us on the marble island where the Austin deed sat 30 days ago and the Dara tax legal pad sat beside it in red ink. The space was empty now. Clean marble, morning light by day, under cabinet light by night. She picked up her mug. She drank. She set it back down and aligned it with the seam again. One precise adjustment. Pamela looked at the oven clock, then at me. The memo. She kept her voice at its standard register. Page 3. A pause. The parenthetical. I looked at her. The weather delay. She held eye contact. You didn't have to include it. I know. The steam was nearly gone from both mugs. The refrigerator held its hum. Upstairs, the house held its sleeping weight. Caden's room, Lily's room, the master bedroom with its door closed to me for 30 nights. I included it because it was accurate. I kept my voice level. Not because it helped me. The kitchen was very quiet. Pamela looked at me for a long time. The same duration she looked at the further review drawer before she put the memo in it. The same duration she stood outside my door in the dark hallway. Measuring, not deciding. Measuring. She picked up her mug. She walked around the island. She did not stop at the bar stool. She walked to the kitchen doorway and paused with one hand on the frame. Pamela turned back to look at me. The guest room is still yours tonight. Her voice held no cruelty. No warmth, only the necessity of it. We have a meeting with Cassandra on Thursday. I nodded once. She looked at me for 3 more seconds. At the load-bearing structure underneath the white t-shirt and the 30 days and the 4-page memo and the 8 sentences that asked for nothing. She found something. I did not know what it was. She turned and walked out of the kitchen. The footsteps went up the stairs, even, unhurried. The master bedroom door closed. I stood at the island alone. The 2 mugs sat on the marble. Steam gone, both half full. The oven clock read 10:41. The under cabinet lights held their low line across the counter. I looked at the empty space on the island where the deed sat, where the red ink sat, where $62,000 and 14 months and a Delaware LLC and a woman named Dara sat until they didn't anymore. Clean marble. I picked up both mugs. I carried them to the sink. I rinsed them. I set them in the drying rack the way she set them, handle facing right, even spacing. I turned off the under cabinet lights. I stood in the dark kitchen for a moment. The foundation was still here. I spent 14 months designing around it, over it, away from it. I called it a cage, and a cage was exactly what I needed it to be. I walked to the hallway. I walked up the stairs. I stopped at the master bedroom door. I did not knock. I walked to the guest room and went inside and closed the door behind me. The nightstand lamp held its low, warm light. The quilted coverlet pulled tight at every corner. The key dish empty on the nightstand. I sat on the edge of the bed. Thursday, Cassandra's office, 2 signatures, a meeting that could mean one document or another, a dissolution or a restructure. The architect would have run the probabilities. I sat in the dark and waited for Thursday the way a structure waits for its load assessment. without designing the outcome, without engineering the result, just holding, just standing. Whatever it was, it would hold or it wouldn't. I turned off the lamp. Chapter 16, Pamela. 2 folders sat on the mahogany desk. Cassandra placed them side by side with the precision of someone who ran this meeting before. The left folder was navy, the right folder was burgundy. Both with typed labels on the tabs, both the same thickness. Cassandra folded her hands on the desk. The navy folder is dissolution. Her voice held its flat efficiency. Equitable distribution, joint custody framework. The trust remains in effect through final settlement. She moved one finger to the right folder. The burgundy folder is reconciliation, a post-nuptial agreement. The equity trust stays in place permanently. Quarterly audits continue. All material financial decisions require dual authorization above $10,000. She did not editorialize. She never editorialized. The mahogany desk held its clean surface between us. 1 legal pad, 1 pen, 2 folders. The morning light came through the window behind Cassandra's chair in a flat gray line. I looked at the folders. Ron sat to my left. The charcoal suit, the white shirt, the collar buttoned, the gold watch on his left wrist. He sat with both hands on his knees. He looked at the desk and did not speak. He said nothing since we left the house. He drove. He found parking. He held the lobby door. He said nothing because I said nothing. He followed the signal. He read the register. 32 days of reading the register. I looked at the navy folder. Dissolution was a clean number. An accountant's word. A balance brought to zero through the correct application of equal and opposite forces. The ledger closed, the audit complete. A final report with no open line items. I looked at the charcoal suit. The arrogance was gone, not hidden, not managed. Gone in the way a structural element was gone when the load it once carried redistributed elsewhere. Ron sat in the chair the way the guest room was quiet at 10:22 p.m., without performance, without frequency, present, waiting. I thought about page 3. 8 sentences, the parenthetical he didn't have to include. Weather delay, permit timeline adjusted. Client informed September 14th. I thought about the kitchen at 10:31 p.m., the 2 mugs, the steam, the 4 words that came out first. I was afraid. No architecture in them, no load-bearing pivot, no big picture framing. 4 words in the same plain register as the 8-sentence memo. The same register as the rinsed mug set, handle right in the drying rack at 10:41 p.m. The foundation was cracked. I knew the difference between a cracked foundation and a condemned one. 9 years of forensic auditing, 14 years of this house. I stood on the floor of both. I knew what held and what didn't. The foundation held. It held badly, with 32 days of evidence and 1 parenthetical and a mug set handle right at 10:41 p.m. And a man sitting in a chair with both hands on his knees waiting for the verdict without designing the outcome. It held. I reached for the silver pen on the desk. Cassandra's eyes moved to my hand. She did not change expression. I opened the burgundy folder. The post-nuptial agreement was 14 pages. The equity trust terms carried forward from the original document. The dual authorization clause sat on page 3. The quarterly audit provision on page 7. The dissolution trigger on page 9. A clause that converted the reconciliation framework to dissolution proceedings if triggered by either party. A circuit breaker, not a lock. I turned to page 14, the signature line, the pen held very still above the paper. That was what Ron gave me in the kitchen. I was afraid. Not of you. 6 words without metaphor, without architecture, without the charming precision of a man who believed his talent excused his accounting. 6 words were not a marriage. They were a data point. 1 quarter's results in a long-term audit. Insufficient for a final report. Sufficient for continued review. I signed. The pen came off the page. I set it on the folder. I turned to Cassandra. She picked up her notary seal. She pressed it to page 14 without ceremony. She closed the folder. I'll file the original with the county this afternoon. She set both folders in the file drawer behind her desk. Certified copies by end of business Friday. She did not congratulate us. She stood. We stood. The meeting was over in the way Cassandra Wayne ended all meetings, not with closure, but with the next procedural step already in motion. The elevator opened to the lobby of the Avalon Commerce Building at 11:14 a.m. The lobby held its dark wood and its potted palms and the particular hush of a building where difficult decisions were made on the upper floors. The glass doors to the street caught the morning light. Ron held the elevator door. I walked out first. The glass lobby doors were 20 feet ahead. Between us and them, a couple came through from the street. The man moved fast, mid-40s. A pressed shirt, collar open, a manila folder tucked under one arm, and his phone in his other hand. His eyes were on the building directory. The woman came through the door behind him. She moved at a different pace, measured, deliberate, a camel coat, well cut, her hair pulled back without apology. She held nothing. She needed nothing. She walked with the particular precision of someone who already decided something the man beside her didn't know yet. The man found Cassandra's suite on the directory. He turned to say something to her. She was already looking at me. The lobby held its quiet between us. 6 feet of dark wood floor and potted palms and morning light from the glass doors. Her eyes were steady, clear, without heat. I recognized the temperature. I wore it myself, in a kitchen with a laptop glowing and a casserole dish going cold on the marble counter. In a country club alcove with my nails pressed into the back of a charcoal wool sleeve. In a hallway at 10:22 p.m., listening for the frequency of a man performing compliance. The woman's name was Claire. I did not know that yet. I would know it later, the way you know the load capacity of a structure only after you stand on its floor. The folder under Julian's arm caught the lobby light. Claire looked at the folder. She looked back at me. The silence between us lasted 3 seconds. I gave her the smallest nod. Not sympathy, not warning, recognition. Ron touched my elbow. The lobby door was ahead. The street beyond it held the ordinary Thursday morning of Avalon Estates, manicured, composed, performing. I walked toward the door. Behind me, the elevator opened again. Cassandra Wayne's assistant called out, "Mr. and Mrs. Ashford, Miss Wayne will see you now." The lobby held its quiet for 1 more second. Then Claire Ashford followed her husband to the elevator. I pushed through the glass door and into the morning. The settlement was signed. The audit continued. The ledger stayed open. That was the most honest number I had. The end. You've been listening to The Wives of Avalon Estate, Book 4, The Life He Hid. Written by Mare Sutton, published by Avalon Press. An Earreads production. Copyright 2026 by Mare Sutton. All rights reserved. Book 5. The Photo She Found. Coming soon.